Summary: The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho. Have you ever felt that emptiness inside you? As if your life were limited by a daily routine, with no room for anything grand, no chance to discover a greater purpose? This feeling of living less than you could is the same one that drives Santiago, a young shepherd from Andalusia, Spain. He loved his sheep and talked to them as if they were his family. But deep down, he carried a restlessness of certainty that there was something more, something the world seemed to hide, something that could only be found if he had the courage to take a risk. And it's exactly this journey we'll embark on together. In this summary of Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist one of the biggest bestsellers of all time. Before we dive in, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because here you'll find summaries that turn stories into profound life lessons. Santiago lived a simple life, but it was full of adventure. Every day he walked through new lands, met new people, and always carried his stories with him. And there was one memory that never left his mind, a memory from a year ago, when he met a young woman in Tarifa, girl with intense eyes and long hair, who sparked a different sensation within him, as if life was showing him that something greater was waiting for him. While tending his sheep, he often thought of her, dreaming of the possibility of seeing her again. On one of his journeys, Santiago stopped to rest in an old abandoned church whose roof had crumbled. Next to an old sycamore tree, he lay down, using his jacket as a bed and his books as a pillow. It was that night he had a recurring dream, one that deeply intrigued him. In his vision, a child led him to Egypt, before the imposing pyramids, and there the boy revealed the existence of a hidden treasure, a treasure capable of changing his life forever. But just as the child was about to show him the exact location, Santiago awoke, left wondering if that dream held any meaning or was just a figment of his imagination. Disturbed, he decided to seek out an old acquaintance in Tarifa, a mysterious woman who interpreted dreams. Upon arriving at her simple home, decorated with beaded curtains, Santiago told her about his vision. The woman, after listening intently, said that the dream carried a truth that there was indeed a treasure, hidden near the pyramids of Egypt. But she set a condition: if Santiago found the treasure, he would have to give her 10% of everything. This left the young man frustrated. The answer seemed obvious, as if the woman had only repeated what he already knew. Yet deep down, something in her words resonated with him, the idea that the deepest truths are often too simple for us to believe. Still intrigued, Santiago walked through the streets of Tarifa when he encountered an ordinary-looking old man with an enigmatic presence. He introduced himself as Melchizedek, the king of Salem, and immediately began to speak about something that completely changed how Santiago viewed his own life. He spoke of the world's greatest lie, the belief that at a certain point in life, we lose control and destiny takes over. This echoed within the young man like a calling, because somehow he knew he was letting life pass him by, stuck in his routine, without pursuing what he truly desired. Melchizedek spoke of the personal legend, the unique purpose that each person carries within themselves and must be pursued at all costs. To confirm the power of his words, he revealed intimate details of Santiago's life, things no one else could know, proving that he was not just a stranger, but someone who carried an important message. He then offered two stones, Urim and Thummim, symbols of ancient wisdom, that would help him interpret omens during his journey. But before leaving, he asked for something in return, that Santiago give up a portion of his flock as a sign of trust. Though reluctant, the young man accepted, feeling that this was the first major step towards the unknown. And so, Santiago decided to begin his journey, even with fear, even without knowing what awaited him. He understood that continuing to live the same life would be far more painful than risking everything in pursuit of his dream. This decision would lead him to cross deserts, face betrayals, discover true love, and understand that the true treasure wasn't just in gold or precious stones, but in the inner transformation that only those who pursue their own personal legend can achieve. Optimized insights. The world's greatest lie is believing we have no control over our destiny. Each person carries within themselves a personal legend, a unique purpose that must be followed. The most powerful truths are often too simple, and thus ignored. If you think Santiago's life has been challenging enough so far, wait until you see what happened when he decided to leave everything behind and head for Egypt. For it was at this point that the universe began to conspire in surprising ways to place him before the greatest challenge of his life. With renewed courage, Santiago made the most difficult decision of his life. He sold his sheep, those he considered his family, and embarked towards the unknown, believing the universe would guide him to the treasure that appeared in his dreams. But upon arriving in Tangier, North Africa, a city filled with sounds, aromas, and customs completely different from what he was used to, Santiago felt the weight of loneliness. For the first time, the cultural shock, and the fear of being in a place where he didn't even understand the language. Yet, he still carried the flame of hope within him, believing that this was just the beginning of a great adventure. Amidst the confusion of the bustling streets, Santiago met a young man who spoke Spanish, and this brought him immediate comfort, as he finally had someone who could guide him. Hearing his plans to cross the desert to Egypt, the young man offered help, saying he knew the ways and could guide him. Santiago, naive and trusting, handed all his savings to his new friend, believing he was in good hands. But reality soon hit him hard. The young man disappeared with all his money, leaving Santiago with nothing in a foreign land. This was one of the most painful moments of his journey, the feeling of failure, of having been deceived, that the entire dream was nothing more than an illusion. It's at this point that many give up, but Santiago remembered the words of King Melchizedek, who said that when we truly want something, the universe conspires in our favor. Instead of surrendering to despair, he decided to look for omens that would show him the next step. Walking through the city, he found a crystal shop, where he began to work in exchange for food and shelter. It was there that he discovered something powerful, that even in the face of the greatest losses, it's possible to start over from scratch. And this fresh start can open unexpected doors, thanks to his effort and his ideas, like cleaning the glass and creating displays to attract customers. The merchant's business began to prosper again. In a short time, Santiago became essential to that place, proving that even in the most difficult situations, there is always a path to growth. It was during this period that Santiago learned a valuable lesson, that every obstacle on the path is not a punishment, but a sign, an omen that indicates the correct direction. This further strengthened his conviction that he was on the right track, even if the journey was long. If you've ever experienced a moment when it seemed like everything was lost, when life took away what was most precious to you, but even then found the strength to rise again, you know exactly the importance of this part of the story, because it's in failures that true transformation happens. And if this content is already inspiring you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, so you don't miss future summaries that could change how you view your own journey. After months of hard work, Santiago saved enough money to buy back his sheep and return to his old life. But something inside him had already changed. When he finally had the opportunity to choose between the comfort of the past or the risk of the future, he remembered the concept of maktub, which means it is written, and understood that his story was destined to go further, that he couldn't simply turn back, for he had been called to something much greater. With that, he decided to continue towards the pyramids of Egypt. And then destiny placed a peculiar Englishman in his path, a man obsessed with the pursuit of alchemy, who traveled with a stack of heavy books and spoke of ancient secrets like the Philosopher's Stone and the Elixir of Life. This meeting was no accident, for both were searching for something greater than simple survival. Both were following the signs that life was sending them, and the desert caravan became the bridge that would connect their stories. Optimized insights. Failure is often just the beginning of an even greater fresh start. Obstacles are not punishments, but omens that indicate the right path. It takes courage to choose to move forward instead of turning back. And if you think crossing the desert in search of treasure would be proof enough, wait to see how Santiago discovered that life's omens are more powerful than any book of wisdom, and that only those who learn to listen to their heart can understand the true language of the world. As the caravan advanced through the desert, Santiago observed the infinite expanse of sand and felt that each step was a test of resilience, not just of the body, but of the soul. It was in this setting that he began to better understand the value of omens' subtle signs, the universe sent to guide those courageous enough to pay attention. His English companion also sought this, but in a different way, through books and the deep study of alchemy, a science that promised to transform metals into gold and grant the cure for all ailments. The Englishman showed enthusiasm, explaining that everything in nature was connected by an invisible force called the soul of the world. But at the same time, he complained about the difficulty of turning theory into practice. Having spent years studying without applying it, this made Santiago reflect, for he realized that true learning wasn't just about reading, but about experiencing, feeling, and taking risks. And so, he began to understand that his journey was also about inner transformation. The silence of the desert and the sound of the wind seemed to converse with Santiago, as if every movement of nature was trying to teach him something. This perception expanded until the moment he met a young woman named Fatima, with whom he instantly fell in love. There, he discovered a new language, the language of the world, a language that needed no words, but that everyone could understand, made of gestures, glances, and the vibration of the heart. It was in this love that he realized true feelings are simple, but have the power to move destinies. However, even as love awakened a desire in him to stay, Fatima showed greatness by encouraging him to continue. She said that true love does not chain, but supports, and that if he did not follow his personal legend, over time this love would turn into frustration. This made Santiago understand that there are moments in life when we need to choose between the comfort of the present and the promise of a greater future. This dilemma is something many face in silence. For how many times have you felt like stopping, contenting yourself with what you already have, even knowing that something greater is waiting for you? And how many times have you failed to move forward for fear of losing what you've already gained? It's exactly at this point that the alchemist appears for the first time, like a mysterious shadow that emerges to challenge Santiago not to give up, reminding him that every dream requires courage and sacrifice, and that if he truly wanted to reach the treasure, he would have to go beyond his own limitations. And if this video is already bringing you profound reflections, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because here we always share stories that go beyond simple narrative, delivering lessons that can transform how you view your own life. Optimized insights. Knowledge without practice doesn't transform. You must experience it. True love doesn't chain. It supports the journey of those we love. Moving forward requires letting go of immediate comfort for a greater purpose. But what Santiago didn't yet know was that the omens would become increasingly intense, and a simple omen in the sky to birds in conflict would forever change his destiny, bringing him face to face with the reality that dreams demand not only faith, but also courage in the face of losing his own life. The desert seemed silent, but in its stillness, it guarded secrets. It was in one of those moments of contemplation that Santiago spotted two eagles battling in the sky, a powerful omen that transformed into a clear vision that an army was approaching to attack the oasis. With a racing heart, he decided to share this vision with the tribal leaders, knowing he risked being disbelieved or even punished, but also conscious that ignoring the sign would be denying the universe's call. The chiefs listened attentively to his revelation and, though suspicious, decided to prepare for battle, making it clear that if what he had predicted did not happen, his life would be at risk. It was at this instant that Santiago understood the weight of following omens, for believing in signs also means assuming responsibilities for them. That night, tension gripped the oasis until the enemy army finally appeared exactly as he had predicted. And thanks to his courage, everyone was ready to defend their lives and their land. The victory brought recognition, riches, and an offer of a position as a counselor among the leaders. But Santiago's heart knew that his destiny was not to remain there. However tempting the stability might be, it was then that the alchemist definitively entered his life, a mysterious man, dressed in black, who approached and asked who had dared to interpret the omen of the birds. Faced with Santiago's firm answer, the alchemist recognized in him the necessary courage to proceed and decided to accompany him for the rest of the journey. This encounter was a turning point, because while Santiago found himself tempted to remain safe, surrounded by love, riches, and prestige, the alchemist confronted him with the truth that all these assets were merely illusions, and that the true treasure was still ahead, near the pyramids. More than that, his inner transformation would only be complete when he accepted the risk of losing everything to gain what truly mattered. How many times have you felt that life offered you a comfortable shortcut, an invitation to give up your dreams in exchange for immediate security? And how many times have you thought of accepting that easier path, even knowing that deep down it would cost you a lifetime of regret? It was exactly this internal struggle that Santiago experienced, the battle between the fear of losing and the desire to conquer. And the alchemist appeared as the guide who reminded him that dreams only come true when we decide to cross the desert of uncertainties without looking back. And if this message is already resonating within you, if you've already realized that life's signs are also calling you to something greater, take a moment to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because here every story mirrors your own journey, revealing that you, too, carry within you the strength to pursue what you were born to live. Optimized insights. Following omens requires courage and responsibility. Comfort can be a trap that distances us from our true purpose. Guides appear in our lives to remind us not to give up on what truly matters, and what's to come will show that Santiago's greatest battle wouldn't be against soldiers or thieves, but against his own fears. Because when he was challenged to prove he could transform into the wind itself, he discovered that true alchemy wasn't in books, but within his heart. Guided by the alchemist, Santiago set off towards the heart of the desert, and each step seemed to carry a greater weight not just of the scorching sand beneath his feet, but of the fear that insisted on settling in his mind. He knew he was approaching the most dangerous part of his journey, where there would be no room for doubts or hesitations. It was during this crossing that he learned one of the most profound lessons, that the fear of losing is far more paralyzing than the loss itself, and that only those who surrender body and soul to the dream are capable of achieving it. Amidst the immensity's silence, the alchemist taught that each person carries within themselves true alchemy, the ability to transform suffering into learning, fear into courage, and doubt into faith. These words made Santiago realize that the gold he sought so desperately might not just be buried under the pyramids, but rather hidden within his own heart. But as in every great journey, danger appeared. Tribal soldiers captured Santiago and the alchemist, accusing them of being spies, and took them to the enemy camp chief. It was at this moment that the alchemist did something unexpected. He declared before everyone that Santiago was a true alchemist, someone capable of transforming into the wind and destroying the entire camp if he wished. This revelation left the young shepherd stunned, gripped by panic, because he himself didn't know if this was possible. But he couldn't back down, for if he failed to prove this ability, he would be condemned to death. The intrigued chief granted him 3 days to demonstrate the promised power. These days became one of the greatest tests of his life, because every second was consumed by doubt, anxiety, and the feeling that he was trapped in an impossible destiny to fulfill. But the alchemist remained serene, reminding him that the necessary strength was not outside, but within him. He only needed to trust in the connection with the soul of the world, the invisible energy that connects all living and non-living things. For the first 2 days, nothing seemed to happen, and despair overwhelmed Santiago, who believed he had reached his limit. But on the 3rd day, he finally understood what the alchemist had been trying to show him. He closed his eyes and felt the wind touch his skin, heard the deserts whisper, and connected with the very essence of nature, asking the wind to help him transform. And suddenly, a sandstorm engulfed the camp, concealing his presence and proving before everyone that the impossible had become reality. The chief, astonished by the display of power, freed Santiago and the alchemist, recognizing that he had witnessed something sacred. It was at this instant that the young shepherd realized that true alchemy was not just about transforming metal into gold, but about transforming oneself, elevating the spirit to a state where the impossible becomes possible, provided there is faith, courage, and total surrender. How many times have you doubted your own strength, thinking you wouldn't be able to face the challenges life placed in your path? And how many times, even at your limit, did you discover you were much stronger than you imagined? This is exactly what Santiago teaches us here, that the greatest miracles don't come from outside, but from our ability to believe and act even when all seems lost. Optimized insights: the fear of loss is always more paralyzing than the loss itself. True alchemy is transforming yourself before transforming the world. Faith and courage awaken invisible forces capable of achieving the impossible. And what comes next will show that, even after enduring so many trials, Santiago would still need to face the final part of his journey, the one that would reveal that the treasure he sought so desperately wasn't where he imagined, but in a place much closer and yet much deeper, concluding his quest with a revelation that would change his life forever. After being freed by the camp chief, Santiago continued his journey with the alchemist until they reached a monastery, hidden in the heart of the desert. It was there that he witnessed another extraordinary lesson, for before his eyes the alchemist transformed lead into gold, using the legendary philosopher's stone, dividing the precious metal into equal parts and giving one to Santiago as a symbol that his journey had already given him more than riches. It had given him inner transformation. But even so, the search for the treasure needed to be completed, because there was a greater calling guiding him. Arriving near the pyramids of Egypt, Santiago felt emotion surge through his body, his heart racing, hands trembling, and eyes welling up, because at that moment, the vision he had carried since his dreams was before him, real and imposing. Without hesitation, he began to dig in the sand in search of the long-awaited treasure, believing that destiny had finally been fulfilled. But life, in its harsh way of testing those who pursue their dreams, placed one last obstacle in his path. A group of war refugees approached and, seeing him digging desperately, believed there was something valuable hidden there. They beat Santiago and stole the gold the alchemist had given him, leaving him near death, bleeding and weak. It was in this moment of pain that he revealed aloud the reason for his search, telling them about the repeated dreams of a treasure buried near the pyramids. The thieves laughed at his story and mocked him, until one of them shared a seemingly trivial detail. He said that he, too, had dreamed of a treasure. Only in his case it was hidden in an old church in Spain, right under a tree. But he wasn't crazy enough to cross the desert after a dream. And it was at that instant, between pain and humiliation, that Santiago had the revelation that would change everything. He understood that the true treasure was not in Egypt, but exactly where his journey had begun, under the tree where he had slept on the first night. This is the point where the story shows us the most impactful truth, that we often search far for what is already near, but without the journey, we wouldn't be able to see it, because the value is not just in finding the gold, but in becoming the person capable of recognizing it. With his last ounce of strength, Santiago gathered what little remained and began the long journey back, now not just in search of a chest of riches, but aware that every tear, every loss, every fear faced had been part of the true treasure, the inner transformation that could never be stolen. And here's a direct reflection for you. How many times have you chased after something, believing happiness was far away, only to realize later that what mattered most was already around you, just waiting for you to have the courage to see it with new eyes? Optimized insights. We often search far for what has always been close. The true value of a dream is not just the achievement, but the transformation in the process. Without the journey, there's no way to recognize the treasure that already exists in our life. And if you think that revelation was powerful, get ready, because in the final part, Santiago will return to his starting point and finally find the buried chest. But he'll discover that the greatest treasure wasn't inside it, but in the experience he lived, the love he found, and the certainty that following the omens is what gives meaning to life. Exhausted, but guided by the flame that never extinguished in his heart, Santiago returned to Spain, once again crossing villages and fields that once seemed ordinary, but now carried new meaning. For he was no longer the same young shepherd who had set off in search of a distant dream. Now he was someone who had faced the desert, fear, loneliness, and loss, and who carried within himself the wisdom gained on the journey. When he finally arrived at the old ruined church, where a large sycamore tree grew amidst the stones, Santiago felt a shiver run through his skin, because that was the very place where everything had begun, where he had had the first dream that launched him on his adventure. And it was there, in the shade of the tree, that he began to dig the earth with trembling hands and a heart pounding with emotion. After digging for long hours, what he found was more than he could imagine: a large chest filled with gold coins, jewels, and precious stones that reflected the light as if they were stars. As he held that treasure in his hands, tears streamed down his face, not just for the wealth he found, but because at that moment he understood the deepest truth, that the real value was not in the accumulated gold, but in the journey that had transformed him into someone worthy of finding it. Santiago remembered Fatima. He remembered the alchemist, the omens of the universe, and all the trials that had shaped him. He realized that the greatest of all treasures was not the buried chest, but rather the love that awaited him and the wisdom he now carried in his soul, because he understood that the universe always speaks to those who have the courage to listen. And that is the message that echoes for all of us, that we often chase after riches, success, and recognition, but in the end discover that the greatest reward lies in inner transformation, in the people we meet along the way, and in the love that accompanies us. Because that is the true meaning of the personal legend: to live a life that honors the signs of the universe and brings us closer to who we truly are. If this story has touched your heart and made you reflect on your own journey, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because here we continue to bring summaries and teachings that can open your eyes to new paths, reminding you that, just like Santiago, you also carry within you the power to listen to the signs and transform your life. Optimized insights. The greatest treasure isn't in the destination, but in the journey that transforms us. Love and wisdom gained are riches no one can steal. The universe speaks to those brave enough to listen and follow the signs. The Alchemist isn't just a story about gold or pyramids, but about each one of us, about the calling we feel in our hearts and so often ignore out of fear. And the final lesson Santiago leaves us is clear. When you decide to pursue your dreams with courage, the universe conspires to make them come true. And in the end, you discover that the true wealth has always been within you.